What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what happens when the very thing you thought was supposed to be healthy is in fact slowly killing you. That's right. To many people, their gardens are actually causing more harm than good. How does this happen, and what can we do to prevent it is what we're going to talk about. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this one. Let's go. You see, the source of the problem is the soil. The soil can contain what's called heavy metals. Many people don't realize heavy metals are actually very dangerous. You hear all the time about heavy metals found in water, things like lead and mercury, but can also be many other heavy metals as well. But the most common are lead and mercury. These are usually found in areas with heavy industrial presence, things like manufacturing and a lot of industrial type work. A lot of these materials have been slowly phased out, but are found in historic areas where they've been used for centuries. Heavy metals can also be found where a lot of animals have been raised. For years, antibiotics, animal feeds, and different things like that were fed to animals, and the manures were spread on land. The problem is that over time we realized that these heavy metals were cancer causing, so we slowly phased them out, but that was not without the damage caused. These heavy metals don't leave the soil. They don't wash out like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They stay in the soil and are present until they're removed. So, in order to remove the dangerous chemicals that can actually kill you and slowly cause chronic disease and illness, you have to do something about it. That's where plants come in. You see, every plant has the ability to uptake nutrients. Nutrients are minerals found in the soil: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, also heavy metals like lead, zinc, chromium, mercury. They're all minerals. Minerals and nutrients are kind of tied together because plants, they don't uptake chemicals like we do. We might uptake vitamin A. We might uptake vitamin C, vitamin K. But the plants, they work on a mineral level. Everything is broken down into minerals or their elemental form, and then the plants uptake those through the root system and then form the vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals that are found in our foods. But when they uptake heavy metals, the heavy metals stay in the plant. So when you eat the plant, whether it's a tomato, a piece of lettuce, celery, or even a carrot, you're eating those chemicals. And since they don't leave the plant, they stay in the plant. Since they don't degrade, they don't wash away, and plants can't convert them into other things, they're found in the form of minerals. This is why beets are very high in iron. When you take iron from a beet, the beet, it's actually mineralized iron that then is good for your bloodstream. It's good for your heart. It's good for cardiovascular health and stuff like that. So that's a mineral, much like mercury, copper, and all the other heavy metals as well. So what can we do to get the harmful stuff out of our soil and keep all the good stuff? The answer is found in plants. This process is called phytoremediation. Many places that used to have heavy metals and a lot of industrial work, or places that are contaminated, they rely on plants to do the cleaning. Plants are the best cleaner of them all, because in order to clean up heavy metals, sometimes you have to add other chemicals to the land, which can cause more damage than the heavy metals did. So scientists have been relying on plants to do the cleanup for us. Phytoremediation comes from the word phyto, which is to have life, living plants, and remediation being to clean. It's to remediate. It's to remove. And so they're using plants to remove the heavy metals. Now, you can do this on your property. It's always suggested to do a soil test first before you start consuming stuff on your land. You want to know if there are heavy metals present above the normalized limits. You want to find out what those heavy metals are and how to get rid of them. One of the first plants that we're going to talk about is sunflowers. Sunflowers are an amazing phytoremediant because they uptake incredible amounts of nutrients from the soil. These are what we call biomass generators. They take tons of minerals from the soil, they take water and sunlight, and they create these huge, massive plants. The larger the biomass, the better the phytoremediation, in theory. These are the best of the best. Numerous studies have found that in one growing season, sunflowers can remove approximately 20 to 30% of the heavy metal content found in the soil. Next, we're going to talk about another plant that does not get enough love. And that plant is cabbage and kale. Cabbage and kale have the ability to phytoremediate soil because they take up heavy metals and store them in their leaves. You see, a lot of leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, arugula, cabbage, kale, collard greens, even things like broccoli and cauliflower have an incredible ability to store heavy metals that are found in the soil in their leaves. Because they have a lot of foliage and they have a lot of biomass, they're incredible at phytoremediation. Now, the next thing is that because they're edible, you don't want to eat them. You also don't want to compost them or feed them to animals. Because the fact of the matter is, since these minerals are in their mineral form and they are heavy metals and they cannot be broken down and they cannot be made less dangerous, they have to be taken off site. And this is where it's highly recommended to either bag them and send them off to a waste disposal service, or send them off to be composted and distributed. And then through the power of dilution, you will have less heavy metals found in the soil. You are not necessarily going to do any damage from your garden to send off your grass clippings and your kale and your sunflower stuff, send them off to a decomposition plant, because once they incorporate it in with hundreds of other people's lawn and grass clippings, the solution is dilution. And so while I don't believe that is okay on a purposeful scale, I don't believe in dumping chemicals in the water just because water is a good diluter of solvents, but because you have to do something with this. It's found in your soil, and it's this is not your fault why it's in the soil. So the answer to that would be dilution. That's how I would recommend spreading it around. Don't eat it, don't feed it to animals, don't keep it on your property. Otherwise, it's just going to keep recycling around because you cannot get rid of it once it is there. And the next phytoremediant is root vegetables. Root vegetables like beets, carrots, turnips, parsnips, even things like dandelions. Anything that has a very long taproot that goes deep down in the soil, that can help to mine the minerals, and minerals being heavy metals as well, mine those minerals up and then takes them and holds them in the roots and the leaves. Then obviously do not eat them, do not compost them, do not feed them to animals, discard them just like you would the rest, because these are being utilized to phytoremediate. These are being used to clean your soil, so you don't want to eat these. The fourth, and by far the most effective phytoremediant, are trees. Whether it's a fruit tree or an ornamental, trees do a great job of removing toxins from the soil because their root systems span farther and deeper than any other plant in the garden. Now, they do grow slower, so it's not as fast of a fix, but they do carry a lot of ability to pull heavy metals, store them in the leaves, and in the fall what you do is you simply rake the leaves up and send them away like you would anything else. Trees are excellent mineral miners because of the fact that over time minerals have a tendency to leach through the soil and move down through the soil column. This happens to macronutrients as well as micronutrients. And that's why when you take mulch leaves and make leaf mold, it's an incredible fertilizer for your garden, and it helps bring the life back because it brings all those micronutrients that are void from the soil surface. It brings them back from the depths of the soil column back up through the leaves fall, you compost it out, and then you can put it back into the soil surface where all the life, bacteria, and fungi are living and thriving. But in our case, to fix toxic soil that can be causing you more harm than good, simply let the leaves fall, rake the leaves up, and discard them. Do that for 3-6 seasons, however long it takes. Keep doing soil tests, and the soil tests will tell you if it's getting better, how fast it's getting better, and how long you should be continuing to remove that organic matter from your premise. And the fifth and final way that you can reduce heavy metals in your garden is not through planting plants, but reducing the amount of inputs that you are putting into the soil. That's right, our lifestyle can actually be adding heavy metals to our soil and can actually be killing us slowly, believe it or not. Things like hoses, tires, even our fertilizers can be adding heavy metals to the garden. It is always suggested to do your research when it comes to applying fertilizers. Many fertilizers have micronutrients that are minerals, but they contain things like lead, chromium, even things like uranium, and lead and mercury, which are very, very common heavy metals like we've talked about. Fertilizers should be tested and should have known amounts of those heavy metals. Organic nutrients, especially ones that come from cow farms, should be tested. This is because, like we talked about, many places that feed their cattle on grass-fed diets can have very heavy metal contents found in the grass. And if they're still using any form of antibiotics, which they shouldn't be, bovine growth hormones, which have been phased out, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, as well as just utilizing corn as a common feed. When it comes to animal manures, that manure that comes from the cow can be considered organic because it comes from a cow. But if the food source is not known and you're feeding them corn, which has been grown with synthetic chemicals that can have heavy metals, on land that can have heavy metals, that corn uptakes, grass is a very good uptake of heavy metals, can be fed to the cows, and then can actually be passed on to you in the form of manure, which can then contaminate your soil. Using things like hoses. Hoses should be lead-free. If you're using an old hose, change out your hose, get a new one, and make sure that you're using all lead-free products because lead can be found in hoses. The next way is through your water source. If you're living in a place that has known lead contaminants like Flint, Michigan, you want to make sure that you're not watering your garden with that water because the lead is not going to leave. In fact, you're actually going to be doing way more damage to your garden than good because the water is actually going to be building up lead way higher than your water level is because, again, your water, it's kind of just passing through your pipes and you might drink a little bit of it. And it's got let's say 300 parts per million. Okay, well, you water your garden for a whole year with 300 parts per million. That lead doesn't leave. That lead sits in your soil. It stays in your soil. And the 300 parts per million becomes 900 parts per million, becomes 1,000 parts per million, and then you get higher and higher and higher concentrations of it, which can become very deadly. So make sure you do a water test and have your water tested because even things like pipes can contain lead. If you have, like I said, water in your lead in your water from your municipal water source, you want to make sure that you're not watering your garden with that. And finally, make sure you're not using things like tires. I see a lot of people using tires as a way to grow their plants in their garden. You see potato towers. You see people just growing plants in tires as a convenient way of making an instant raised bed. Tires have so many heavy metals found in them, and not just lead, not just mercury. We're talking hundreds of chemicals that are not good for you to ingest whatsoever. They can leach into the soil and cause more harm than good. Also, the final thing is if you're using old railroad ties. Old railroad ties people use for their raised beds. These can have things like copper arsenic in them, which is a very bad chemical to have in your soil. It's not a heavy metal like lead, and it's not a heavy metal like mercury, but it is a chemical that will leach into your soil that can cause more harm than good and can slowly kill you as it leaches into the soil. This is called creosote, and creosote is so bad for you. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that if you're using railroad ties, that you're using modern day railroad ties, ones that have been properly pressure treated. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. Make sure to spread this video around because it's certainly a topic I do not see enough gardeners talking about, and it's something that is always a hot topic, hot button topic, because we always are talking about contaminants found in our lifestyle, contaminants found in the water, contaminants found in our food. And it can be coming right from your own source that you think is healthy. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. Make sure to click that like button. It helps spread this video around. Comment down below if you've done this before, if you have soil that is toxic and what you're doing about it, or if you didn't even realize that your soil could be toxic. Let me know what you learned. I want to know that you found something informative from these videos, and we'll catch you all on tomorrow's episode. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel. Talk to you later. Grow big or go home.